Good evening and welcome to Smart Entrepreneurship Decoded on Transcontinental Times. I have always spoken about the various paths that are there to achieve entrepreneurial success, away from the myths, the common folklore, and kind of crap you hear from people after they make it. I wrote about midlife entrepreneurship in my book, Reboot to Reconquer, Navigating the Afternoon of Life. And I advised midlifers with stagnant careers to not try their hand at entrepreneurship without acquiring the skills that stagnated their careers. I was saying that even as I knew that 55% of the successful startups in the world are set up by people above the age of 35. It's not necessarily a young man's game. Our guest tonight is a story that I thought needs to be told. We celebrate unicorn founders, we celebrate all kinds of entrepreneurs, but we try to run through a particular narrative. Either there is a deep sob story behind it, or the person comes from IIT, IIM, etc. But our guest tonight, the only I he went to and did was instrumentation engineering. Not exactly the sexiest thing, right? But this brings me to my story. I know him from the past few decades. There are similarities to our stories. Both of us achieved a certain degree of success in our professional careers working in the US. Both of us came back. Both of us set up companies around the same time, 2007 to 2009, living in the same apartment block, setting up our companies within a kilometer of each other. I set up a company in a completely different area to my area of expertise with great bravado, great bombastic talk, lot of management jargon, bold, going where nobody has gone before, ready to change the world. And within 3 years, I was full of debt, despair, and utter destruction for my family for the next decade. On the other hand, our guest tonight set up a company in a calm, collected manner in an area of his expertise, taking his wife along with him, something that I don't advise people to do in entrepreneurship. I say, keep your family out. But he took his wife along with him. And this, over a period of 7 to 8 years, they set up a highly successful company, completely self-funded, and sold it to a large Indian conglomerate. There is no sob story in this. There is no IIT, IIM funding in this. There is no VC valuation in this. But these are the kinds of role models of entrepreneurship that we as Indians should celebrate. With that, let's welcome our guest tonight, Ravi Joshi, Chairman of the Board and Chief Mentor of Undocked. Welcome, Ravi.
Nalin, thank you for having me on your show. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So Ravi, we often hear about people who say, I learned from my mistakes. And I believe that failure only teaches you how to fail, doesn't teach you how to succeed. You have seen success as you sold your company. I'm sure there were a lot of moments which we'll talk about later. So tell us, what is it that made you succeed? What were the things that made you succeed?
So good question, off the bat. Incidentally, when I started Keystone, I was 40 years old. When you get to be 40, you essentially have run a fair degree of miles. And while there is always, like you said, people celebrate early founders. I'm 24 in my garage, my basement, I'm doing this. But for me, what happened was, I was having a fairly cushy career in a blue chip company. And I came to the end of the road on how far I could grow there. And I either had to move across the ocean or look at what else I can do. And that got me thinking. So fundamentally, I have a set of characteristics, Nalin. I have fairly high initiative. Typically, if you were to say, hey, who will do this? I'm the first one to raise my hand. I'm a little stubborn. I tend to persist with my ideas. And for good or for bad, now they say it's good to have very short attention span. Most entrepreneurs have very short attention span. That's how I was. I could quickly grasp what was going on and make deductions and make decisions. And I was always that way, and I had a certain uh, intent to control. I wanted to have a say in my destiny. I was fortunate to work with a set of managers, my managers, who let me do my own thing. As long as it delivered, they let me do my own thing. So some of these are the core ingredients. I know you're 40, you've achieved success in the corporate world. You have a fairly healthy bank balance. And so in my situation, I took my base ingredients, and I said, no, let's go do something. There is a lot of opportunities. And the other big thing, Nalin, the key thing is, when you get to my age and you have built industry contacts, right? You've gone through large projects, you made connections. So I was very lucky to inherit a very vibrant network from my previous job. And since most of my goals were to pursue my core expertise and really operate in the same business world, that I was part of as an employee of a company, I was in a very well-known sandbox, right? It's just that I was going to undertake a different persona. Of course, much later I realized that running a P&L and having the responsibility of payroll of say 300 people is something no company will teach. But there were a lot of other core ingredients that I had accrued in my experience, and I genuinely felt I was quite well set up to go at this. So I sold my 401k, raise some money, and bootstrap the company, and started to really build the business.
So the key things I picked up from there, that you stepped out with a good network, you stepped up with a certain degree of clarity of thought, and you stepped out with a very strong belief in whatever we were doing.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
the journey wouldn't have been easy, right? I'm sure there were dark moments, I'm sure there were difficult moments, etc. Is it easier to tide over with a life partner as a co-founder, or is it tougher?
So, see, one more aspect of mine that can be watched is, I've always surrounded myself with family, even in my other jobs. In my previous job, there were 6 people from my family. Uh, you know, I have this ability to compartmentalize. I could care less what someone is outside the office. When we come into an office, and this is a lesson I learned, at great sacrifice, by the way. When you hire somebody, the first thing you have to do is there has to be very clear role and responsibilities that you set out, right? What is this person accountable for? Enable them and get out of the way. So I did not really pay much credence to the relationship outside the office, but I benefited from this massive level of comfort and trust you have in just handing over the keys to somebody else, right? So that, in hindsight, worked very well. But as a person, when we are in a professional environment, I absolutely don't give any credence to personal relationships.
So talk to me about, when people become successful, or if they fail, they often blame luck, fluke, chance.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what weightage would you give hard work, smart work, skill, and luck, fluke, chance. What worked for you?
So, I mean, if you look at luck, fluke, and chance, logically, you have to tie it back to timing, right? Whatever you want to do, right? The marketplace at some point accepts your idea, your product, your service, and at other times it rejects it. So, I would put down luck and fluke and chance to timing, right? So, when you start a company, you have to be very, very aware of, is this the right timing? Sometimes you get into a business, the timing is right, and then some macro event pushes you down. That you can't help, right? That's okay. But that's timing, and uh, that's how it is. And after that, once you get going, it's really effort, Nalin. It's absolutely effort, and there will be difficult days. To give you an example, for most of my career, I was actually a software engineer. I was writing code, and I was hiring technical teams and building products. No one taught me that I have to sit and research and build the top of the sales funnel and make cold calls. I was just not built for that. It was utterly uncomfortable. So one thing is if you want to go do something on your own, you have to be able to handle difficult days, right? And things will come your way that you'll never expect to get your way. There is a very beautiful saying by Mike Tyson, by the way. You can make all the wonderful plans till you get punched in the face, right? And in every startup journey, you'll get punched in the face. And in my career at Keystone as a founder and CEO, there were multiple situations where we were thrown a curveball that we didn't know how to handle, but we had to very, very quickly learn how to handle. And effort was the mainstay. We just had to work very, very hard, and the entire team rallied, and we came out of the woods more than once.
So in an important nugget there, it is about timing. And Bill Gross also, from his study of startups success and failure, said that the most important criteria is timing. You can call it luck, fluke, chance, but you got it right. It's timing. You also quoted Mike Tyson there, where he said, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. But more appropriately for me, he said, old too soon, wise too late, when he was in jail. For whatever he had done at that time. So I remember Mike Tyson saying as well, but in a different context. Let's take a leap of faith a little bit. Let's move a little ahead. Now that you have seen success, I'm sure you have way more to go. You're still young. When you've started something again, do you think differently financially when you have resources versus what you thought earlier? I'll specify my question a little bit more. When there is adversity and there is limited capital, which is what most people face in the beginning, they have certain clarity of thought. They know they have to do this, otherwise there is nothing beyond this. But now you have options. Does it make it tougher or does it make it easier?
Great question. And I struggle with it, by the way. It makes it tougher because you start to take liberties, right? You start to take liberties, and you have in the back of your mind this belief that, okay, if it's a question of another 100K, I know where to go get it from. And that's why to be a serial entrepreneur, you have to be extremely disciplined. So as much as, I can go fund my current venture, we have this time around, Nalin, we're building products. And we have every intent to go raise money. It's critical, right? It's not about there is a source of funding. It's about whether this thing you're creating, does it stand the test of scrutiny and validation that only an external, unvested, dispassionate, and sometimes brutally honest person can bring to the table. And that's what, say, your VCs and angels are. So to me, in a nutshell, it's a little harder because you think you have a war chest. But that's something I'm fighting very, very hard to change. And to be frank, I've had a couple of very uncomfortable discussions over the past 2 weeks with the core team, and that's just the way it is, right? You're in a startup. You're there to create commercial success, right? Philanthropy is different. You're here to build a commercial success, and the rigor that somebody demonstrates with friends and family seed round has to be there, whether it's your own money. You must absolutely be very disciplined.
So Ravi, you mentioned serial entrepreneur, and I want to pick your brain a little bit about that. Now, you started out, had professional success, started this company. I'm sure there were dark moments, there were difficult times. You were self-funded, bootstrapped. You had put you and your wife both in the same pot. There was no fallback option. And then you saw relative success when you sold the company. I say relative because I expect much more will come your way.
Sure.
Then why again? What is this Kira? I mean, are you not happy having a calm and cool life, or what is it that picks you to start again?
So I think most of us are restless, and the restless energy has to be channeled right. Right. So I'm quite restless by nature. I have to keep doing things. And, I did to be, fair to the environment, I've been given. I did take some time off. I've had a relatively quiet time. I've picked up other vocations. I've spent time traveling and meeting family. So there was a lot of personal debt I had accrued, Nalin, in terms of the time I spent with my family, my son. For the most part, I have not seen most of my son's growing years, right? I was always on the road. So I've had chance to kind of repay some of those debts, and the restless mind took over again. And you have to exercise whatever faculties you have. You have to exercise them. And for a while, I was thinking, why don't I go get into, philanthropy full time? And I was, really caught up in that idea. I was struggling, what should I do? And my father told a very sage thing. He said, yes, you can do philanthropy for the next 30 years, but for the next 10 years, if you actually put your faculties to use, you could raise a significantly large corpus for what you can do for the next 20 years, right? You can hire someone to do your job in philanthropy, which you can, and go use your faculties to go build another enterprise and see another exit. And then if you are so kind-hearted, use that next exit and the funds from the exit to do a larger scale philanthropy. So that kind of made sense. So right now I'm very happy to be back in a situation where I'm able to think, and fundamentally we all like to solve problems, Nalin.
So
you have to be.
That's very sound advice, and I can see where he was going with that.
Yeah.
So in your next startup, have you also taken your wife along, or she decided enough was enough with you?
No, I think we said enough is enough. But here's the good part. When you go through any experience, right? Two people can take away very different things from the experience, positive learnings. So so in my wife's case, in Deepa's case, she's taken a set of learnings. And she's always been a good teacher. She's been a good mentor, and she's logically very sound. So she's at a point where she is starting to network, meet a lot of the startup community in Bangalore, and she's focused on how she can be a angel investor and be a coach and mentor. And I think that suits her very well. I like to be in the middle of things. Like I said earlier, I do like a degree of control, Nalin. I can't get away from it.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you're not going to say anything bad about your wife sitting at home tonight. You need to sleep in the same house. Yeah. So let's move on a little bit. You mentioned about mentoring startups and meeting a lot more of them. And one of the things when you get success is a lot of people start approaching you for investment.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's easy to tell somebody what is wrong in something, right? And if we can tell you what is wrong, but it's difficult to tell what is right.
Yeah.
Which is what to do versus what not to do. And I find too much of the discourse about what not to do.
Correct.
So let's talk about when you meet these young entrepreneurs of today, or not so young also, what are the few things that you see and you think, wow, I wish I had this trait or this quality that this young generation has got? Do you see anything like that? A fundamental difference between them and when, say, you and I started 15 years ago?
Yeah, I think so. If you look at the way society's rules are structured, right? You're essentially hopping from a bus to bus. You go to school, high school, college, and then a job, then family. So there was this entire structure created, assuming you had a fruitful life of about 55 years, and then what, right? So that structure doesn't hold good anymore, Nalin. Right? Where the world is, going back to life expectancy, that's going up, right? Which is a great thing. And also where we are, people are leading longer and more vibrant lives today. And where biotechnology is going in 10 years, I'm pretty sure there'll be enough innovation where people can start to live very fruitfully till 100, 120. So to some extent, the younger generation has seen a lot of this progress. In fact, when I talk to people, I tell them, you know what? We were told we'll retire at 58. No, you should tell yourself we'll retire at 100, right? So the younger generation actually has this benefit of having seen a lot of progress in people's longevity, in technology, in healthcare. So they need not be adverse to taking any kind of risk, because you have enough and abundant time to reset. Let's say you're on a startup for 5 years. If it doesn't work, doesn't matter, right? There's a lot more time where you came from. So this concept of I only have so much time in which I have to do this, accrue savings and retire, That has gone away. And to a large extent, this generation realizes that they have a much longer lease on productive time than what we had. And that's a great asset to have, because end of the day, given time and effort, uh, you will get opportunities. You may not get the timing right the first time, but second time, hey, it might very well work for you. So youngsters today understand that there's a much bigger risk appetite. Going back to Maslow's law, right? We are well beyond that, roti kabda or makan. People are in a much more settled environment. And to me, that's also a testament of what's gone right in the macro environment, right? Today, a lot more companies can actually, lot more startup founders can take risks that they would not take probably 20 years ago. So the environment is right. People have the confidence. So there is there's massive positives in the ecosystem today.
So that's an interesting point you bring, because a lot of people don't think of longevity as a key driver towards behavior of startup entrepreneurs and as a kind of advantage. But do you also feel that today's entrepreneurs live under so many choices, so many options, that in a sense they need the hand of a mentor much more?
They do need a hand of a mentor. So what's happening is just the range of possibilities right now is so massive, right? Let's take decentralized finance, for example, right? So DeFi is emerging, and you have this whole concept of distributed autonomous organization, right? Now let's say there is a founder who's very enamored by these two concepts, right? Then okay, let me go set a DeFi startup and float that out as a DAO. So, but now, can you really handle it? The systems are not mature enough. There's not enough experience under the belt. You've not seen enough success stories or failures to pick out what is the best practices of any environment. So today, I think one of the burden that today's founders will have is just a lot of choices in terms of technology, in terms of money. There is a lot of VC money available. So that's why, I do believe that you should be very, very logical when you set out to start a company, right? You have to look at a variety of things before you jump head in. And that's where one of the things I recommend, Nalin, is, if you're a founder, look to set up a board very quickly, right? Don't wait for some event. Don't let me get to Series A or Series B to form a board. Set up a board very quickly, get some experience, in the room where you can learn from them, if nothing else.
It's a good point. I would only add that you should also listen to the board. From my own experience, I set up a world-class board, but I was so stubborn, I wouldn't listen to anybody. So you should also listen to the board. You mentioned product company, right? Undocked is a product company. Yeah. Now, India is not known for product companies. Most of our large IT firms are service-oriented, software-oriented. Even you can't find a software product off the shelf from any of them, right? Right. So what made this shift in you to go for a product company?
So great question. And by the way, I had the same proverbial question in 2009, and a wise old man set me straight. So there's nothing wrong in setting any kind of a company. It could be a great product or a wonderful service, innovative service. Everything is fine. And what we did at Keystone is a testament to the fact that you can set up a services company and still get good valuations, right? But however, what we are doing now is a result of over 2.5 decades of experience, and we have seen recurring problems that large companies face. And what's happening is supply chain itself is shifting dramatically. Right, the degree of automation that was there 10 years ago versus now is very different. The labor force that's available is very different, right? So companies executives are starting to grapple with different problems, from capital, from labor. So all of these are very large issues that are here to stay for the next 8 to 10 years. And we believe there is a set of solutions we have on the drawing board that actually will address these problems. We are squarely attacking supply chain and this whole e-commerce fulfillment area, which is going to grow double digits for a long time.
So, product companies typically take a longer life cycle to commercialize, break even, and all of that stuff. What is your advice to product companies about at what stage should they look for capital?
So
External capital.
external capital, yes. So I think, don't bet the farm too early or don't wait for too long. I think the biggest benefit to going and getting some external funding early is validation, Nalin. End of the day, most founders are so, enthused about their idea. They believe this is it. This is the silver bullet. You run very hard. But when you go and raise capital, I mean, like I said, don't give out the farm. Pledge some degree of your equity. There's somebody new on the cap table, but raise some money where an external validation is done, where you pass that scrutiny, right? And once you do that, that's the primary benefit, in my opinion. Otherwise, you can just do friends and family only. But I think go and have some professional funding, because when it's viewed through the lens of somebody who sees 10 pitch decks every day, you learn something, right? You learn something, and they'll bring you down to the earth very quickly. So do that, and so that's just what it is. And of course, after that, effort has to be put in. You scale, and when you go for the later rounds, be careful about how you dilute, right? Be careful about how you set up your safe instruments, right? Sometimes people set up safe instruments, and the valuation keeps changing, and over a period of time they've raised enough capital, and suddenly they see that their cap table looks very different, and they are holding no more than 10-15% of the equity. So raise some early money, but after that, be a lot more judicious in how you bring new money.
That's good sane advice. We're running out of time, so I'm going to come to my last question. Now, a VC or a PE fund or large alternate investment funds typically are investing other people's money. So you have a professional manager managing it. I get that.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to people who have made money in their own lifetime, and you didn't make it at the age of 21 through some cool software product, right? This is sheer hard work, applying your skill, applying your experience, using your network. It is I would say it is a traditional hard-assed way, and you took it to success.
Yeah.
So when a person like you is approached for investment, and you look at entrepreneurs, do you look for people like yourself? Do you look for maverick ideas? Do you look for opportunities of the future? What is it that excites a person like you?
So, I'm new to this, Nalin. I have to, profess to that fact. We have made some investments. So far, the investments I've made have been primarily looking at the founding team. Obviously, you understand and you vet the landscape. Is it the right business? For example, I understand supply chain, I understand e-commerce, I understand retail. I understand to some degree, SaaS marketplace, right? So that is there. But the investments I've made so far have been primarily looking at the founders, and when I look at founders, of course, you have to be a smart person, but I also look for, does this person have grit, right? So grit is the intersection of passion and perseverance. Does he or she have the grit? And I look for humility. I feel smart people who are humble always make good founders, good colleagues, good people to be in your orbit. I look for people who are humble, who are smart, who have the grit, and also they should be very, very vested in what they're doing, right? And to some extent, if the founder is bringing some of his or her own money, that's a plus, right? That makes me feel a little better that, okay, they are like, just like I sold my 401k. So is somebody willing to bet, their own personal funds? Of course, if they can't, they can't. But otherwise, great, their emotional intelligence and how humble they are, and also, do they have the deep competency? Are they technically good? Are they domain savvy? Those are the few things I look for.
Yeah, it's very well said. Earlier you mentioned about you being a little stubborn about your idea, your vision, and how to do it. But at the same time, while you're persevering through that, you need to remain humble. You remain to pass through difficult times with great grit and determination. You are an embodiment of that. Ravi, thank you very much. It has been an absolute delight hosting you. Your insights, your real world practical steps are something that we should follow, rather than some of the glorified bombastic talk we hear in the echo chamber of the startup world. Thank you very much, Ravi, for joining me tonight. Wish you all the best for Undocked. Have a great night.
Thank you, Nalin. Good night. Bye. Bye.